Hello again. I'm Christopher Brandon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network.
And I'm George Williams. I'm the Next Search Catalog Coordinator at Northeast Kansas Library System.
And today we have a massive project for you. It's so massive that we're actually going to split this topic into 2 episodes. But today we're going to be tackling wrangling the circulation rules page. Before we get into that, as always, we are hosted by koha-US. You will find a plethora of fantastic resources on our website at koha-us.org. You'll find many things that you can learn from under the Learn tab, including our video playlist, which includes all of our episodes for 2 seasons, plus Monday Minutes and deep dive into Koha. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to George, and we're going to get this underway.
So some of you may have seen this before. Almost certainly, if you were at the koha-US conference in Pueblo, I actually did a workshop where I sat down with at one of the tables with about a dozen people, and I walked through all the steps to do this. One of the things about this piece of code, though, about this whole setup, is that it's the Koha gift that keeps on giving, because every time there's a change to the circulation rules page, you've got to update the code. And lately it's been, there's been something added with virtually every version. There's something gets added to the circulation rules table. So let me start off by showing you the problem. I'm going to end up sharing 3 screens here to show you just how weird this is, or how complex it is. So I'm going to go to Koha admin. Actually, I want to go to, I've got another window open. This is the koha-US test site. So I'm going to go to Koha admin, and I'm going to go to circulation and find rules. And this is this table here, which on koha-US's demo site is one of the fewest amount of rules I've ever seen in a Koha, because usually there's, I've got 50 libraries, and so each library has at least 5 or 6 rules, and some of them have like over 100 rules, and so these table gets really huge. But this is what you see on one screen, and you have to scroll way over from side to side. So actually, I'm going to adjust this window to the full width. So I have 3 screens on my desktop computer here. So this is when you get the table across multiple screens, this is what you see on screen 1. This is what you see on screen 2. So the first screen goes over about halfway through hard due date. The second screen starts at hard due date and ends at on-shelf hold allowed. And then the third screen over here, we've got a little bit of bleed off over here. It ends on-shelf holds allowed, and then has the last few columns. So this whole table, when displayed as one big browser window, is, I wrote this down over here somewhere in my notes. It's 4,370 pixels wide. It's a huge amount of space on the screen.
So we did an episode a while back where we made things bigger.
Yeah.
And we called that embiggening.
Yeah, it's a Simpsons word.
So we're trying to go the opposite direction this episode and make some things smaller because it's so huge. And I guess we're going to coin this as the unembiggening.
Yeah, why not? So I've shown this off. I did a presentation on this at the Koha conference. The first time I did this was when I still worked in Idaho, so like in 2014 or 2015, I wrote this code initially. And then each version of Koha, it keeps getting bigger and bigger and more and more. And I did a presentation on it at the Koha conference in Coeur d'Alene in 2017. And then in 2019, in Pueblo, I did the workshop where I helped other people add it to their systems. And they made modifications to it. So I thought it would just be, we've never done a video on it. So I thought I would go through some of the things I do, because there's more stuff than what I do just to make the table narrower. There's a bunch of different things that we can do to do this. I've got a full set of notes on this at my personal website. And so we'll share that. But I'm going to start off with, I'm just going to create some jQuery to begin with so I'm going to flip over to the jQuery here and start adding things to Koha. So this first, and I'll walk through each piece of code on a one-by-one basis. So the first piece here, I've got all kinds of comments in here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a jQuery function. And this function, all it's doing is it's saying whenever the data table on that page loads, then it's going to start this whole round of jQuery. So there's a lot of tables in Koha, and I don't want this code to affect any other tables. And this table now is a data table because it's got this search bar at the top to allow you to search through the table. And so nothing is going to happen on this page until this data table loads. So that's the first thing I've got to do, is I've got to set up these controls that'll make it so that this only happens when that data table loads. So I've got, it's on the page that has the ID default circulation rules. And this is the code here on init-dt. When the data table initiates, that's when all the rest of this code is going to fire. So that's the first part I've got going on, is I've just got a way to say that it's only going to happen when this table loads. And the first thing that I do, let me add to that code, is I'm going to create a button that will collapse part of this screen. So if you're working with the circulation rules, you're in the system administration module, and then we've got this whole column on the left-hand side that takes up space. And if we adjust the screen size, this actually gets wider. The wider you make the screen, the wider that little left-hand navigation bar gets.
Like an
So, what was that?
It's like an infestation.
Well, if you're messing around in the administration module, it's a really easy way to get from place to place. But if you're going to edit the circulation rules, you're probably not going to go from circulation rules to mark bibliographic frameworks, one right after the other.
Yeah.
And if you really need to do that, then you can just exit. Well, one of the things that happens with this code is that it's not permanent. It's not going to make it disappear forever. It's just going to make it disappear until you reload the page.
In all my years of working in Koha, I don't think I've ever used that margin over there, that column. There's been no need for me to bounce over to that menu.
I think I've used it sometimes, like going from item types to authorized values when I'm editing collection codes and item types maybe, but I've never used it from the circulation and find rules page.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an option you always have, is you can just make it disappear permanently. But you could even just make it disappear permanently from this page. What I did though is I created a button, and that's what this first bit of code does. So I put a button up here that says show full width, and if I click on that, it just eliminates that column. And so the way this works is, the first thing I've got here, and I'm inside that on initiate the data table, do this function. And so the first part is I create a button, and it's just a button that I gave the name, I gave it the name all shows. I gave it an ID called all shows. Because I know that that's not a name that any other thing in Koha, nothing else in Koha has that same ID. So I know this isn't going to affect anything else in Koha.
still, this is
And
limited to just this table too. So
yeah, and it's
if you're
only going to
looking for the
appear on,
browser,
yeah, it's only going to appear on this page because it's only going to load after the circulation rules table loads. And the first line here just is saying, you know, it's finding this navigation menu. And let me reload the page so we can get it back. So all of this content here is in a div that has a title of navigation menu, nav menu. That's what the ID on that div is. And so it's saying, find that div, and on the parent of that div, add this button. And then the next part says, you know, what happens when you click on that button. This is creating a function. And the first thing that it's going to do is it's going to take all the content out of that navigation menu and make it disappear. And then it's going to make the button disappear, because if you don't make the button disappear, it like superimposes itself on top of the table, and it interferes with the table a little bit. But the next thing it does is this division over here. Even if you remove all the content, Bootstrap still has a area defined here. So even after you remove the content, it still holds that space on the screen. And that's because there's a Bootstrap class over there. The first class is called column small 10. Column SM10, which says, you know, we're going to use 10 columns for that table. And then the second part says the first part says we're going to use 10 columns. And then the second part says we're going to start 2 columns to the left, to the right. So what we want to do is remove that column push 2. And then once we remove that, then the table will slide over. And so it'll still be a table that's taking up 10 columns, but it's going to start at column 0 instead of starting at column 2.
Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming that because of the way Bootstrap is structured, you can't just remove the column and it gets rid of everything that's inside it.
Yeah, I think that's what happened when I tried that. When I developed this years and years ago, if you get rid of the column SM10, then the table disappears too. So you want that column SM10 class, but you just want to get rid of the part of that class that pushes it over to the second space that uses up those first 2 columns.
Got it. Okay.
And then the next thing, this is something that was new that I had to add this last year, is we now have these headers are sticky, so that when you scroll through the table, they stick to the top of the table.
Yeah.
So that you see them no matter where you are on the table, which is really convenient. But the problem is that if you don't, when you resize the page, they stick to where they were originally. Because what gets them to move with the table is they think that they don't have to move until the window size gets adjusted. So the easy thing to do there is I trigger a window trigger resize. So when you click on this button, the first thing it does is it hides the content, then it removes that class, and then it says to the browser, oh, I've resized your window to the exact same size it was before. And that causes these sticky headers to stay stuck to the table instead of being stuck where they were.
Wow. That seems like I think I would have run into that and like been scratching my head. Boy, yeah, how do you fix something like that? That must have been interesting to try and research and figure out.
You know, it was a while ago that I did this, and I think I did have to scratch my head for a while. And that was what I figured was the way that I discovered that it was a Windows resize issue is because I noticed that when I resized the window, the problem would go away. So then I had to figure out how to trigger that window resize. And if you just use .trigger resize and you don't give it any parameters of what to resize to, it just resizes to the size it's already at. And so that's the first part of this, is this button. So all we've done so far right now is added that button, and it resizes the page and it moves all of that stuff. And just by doing that, we get this down to 2 screens. We don't have to use 3 screens to see the table anymore. We can do it on on 2. So we've lost a screen already. So it's very, very useful just getting rid of that.
Technically, you could shrink the screen to fit everything, but
yeah,
it's a little too small to read.
Yeah, this is at 50%. That's it. So this is 60. Even if you size it down to 60%, you've still got part of it hanging off the side of the screen. And I got my first pair of glasses when I was like 42, and every like 4 years I have to get a stronger prescription.
Yeah.
So making the text on the screen a lot smaller doesn't help me that much. But the next thing that I do though is it's not so bad on the test server. I'm actually going to add a rule here to give us some more stuff to play with. Now we've got 2 rules here instead of just the 1. Because the next thing I want to that I did to make this easier to work with was something to help my eyes. So let me add the next bit of code. This will highlight a row when you hover over it. So let me reload the page. Actually, I don't want to duplicate the rule. So, if you do size this down and make it harder for yourself to see what the text is, if you've got, like I said, some of the libraries I have like almost 100 rules. So this next bit of code adds this hover function so that when you hover over a row, it highlights the row so that it's easy to see across the 2 screens which row you're actually trying to identify. So the code for that is pretty simple stuff. We start off with default circulations table row, and we add the .hover function, which is a built-in command in jQuery. And the first part of this function tells the browser that when you move the mouse over that row, you're going to add a class called highlighted row. And highlighted row is something that's either part of Bootstrap or it's a class that's part of Koha that automatically highlights a row. So it doesn't require any extra CSS. This is something that already exists inside of Koha that you can just call up whenever you want to add a hover to something. You can say highlight this row. And so this first part says when you move over something, add this highlighted row class. And then when you move out, the next part of the function says remove this class highlighted row. So it's really simple jQuery, and it's just a really simple function.
I will say that if you do yourself any favors with jQuery, get to know Bootstrap, because Koha uses Bootstrap, and there are a lot of great features within Bootstrap that aren't necessarily in use, or they're just kind of hidden, but they're very powerful, and you can take advantage of a lot of them.
Yeah. So this is a pretty simple function, and it really makes it easy, when you've got a stack of rows this tall, to figure out which one you're actually looking at.
Yeah, that's great.
The other thing that I find a problem with when I do have a stack, sometimes that stack of circulation rules will go above the top of the page. And so when you click on one to edit, it'll bring all the values into the editing row. But sometimes if you are doing some work, you might forget. You might want to reference back to what it was before you started changing it.
Mm-hmm.
And if the row you want to look at is way above the top of the screen, you've got to scroll up and then scroll back down and scroll up and scroll back down. So the next thing I've got is a function that allows you to click on a row and move it to the bottom. So let's reload all of this. So if I click on this audiobook row, it'll move it to the last line of the table.
Nice.
And that way, if you've got, like I said, if you've got 50 rules, you don't have, and you want to reference it, you don't have to scroll up and down. And this is another one that's pretty simple. So the way that I identify the rows is I say any row that has the word edit somewhere in it, and they all do, because they've all got this button here that says edit.
Mm-hmm.
So any row that contains the word edit, when you click on that row, it's going to take this row and insert it before the edit row. So it's really simple. And then in this case too, I trigger a window resize because sometimes I've found that when you move the rows around, that table header gets a little wonky when you're scrolling. So this just eliminates that that problem. And so now we've got, rows that highlight, rows that move. Another situation that comes up a lot of times when I've got libraries with lots of circulation rules is sometimes it's convenient to see what else, to get like all the things that have those rules that are similar together. So the next thing I've got is to sort the rows. So let me reload this again. If the way that I set this up is when you click on the footer of the table, it will sort the rows alphabetically. When there's only 2 rows in the table, that's not very impressive. But when you've got, let me actually flip over to my test server and show this one actually working with a better example. So we've got a bunch of rows here, not too many. But let's say I want to, I know that I want to look at these. I want to see everything that has like a 21-day loan. And instead of, looking here and here and here and here and here, if I just sort the table, then all of the things that have a 21-day loan are right here. And I can see how they're similar, how they're different. And that can be really convenient. Nice. Particularly when you're working with libraries that might have, like I said, some of them have close to 100 circulation rules. So,
right.
So those are the first 4 things that I thought we would cover. And in the next video, we'll get down to the process of making the table narrower, of unambiguing the circulation table.
Awesome. Well, this is a great start, and so I hope everybody tunes in for the next episode, which we will continue this project. Make sure that you visit our channel on YouTube so that you can like and subscribe to our channel, and also make comments. We like to read those comments. Thank you for stopping by, and we will see you in another 2 weeks for part 2.
All right. Bye, everybody.